With Smash Ultimate right around the corner, and of course Game Awards right before it, the YouTube speculation is running wild. The most talked about characters are people like Banjo, Steve, Sora, and a handful of other Square Enix representatives. People get so wrapped up in this conversation though, they seem to forget the other possibilities, and while I'm not predicting any of these characters, I do want to go over some characters I don't think that are being given enough attention in this conversation. With that out of the way, let's discuss 5 characters that aren't being given enough attention. Tails. One of my predictions for the main roster was Shadow as an Echo Fighter. Shadow ended up being an assist trophy like he has been in the past, which is nice to see him in the game at the very least, but I really thought that he would make it as an Echo Fighter. It felt like an obvious pick to me, kinda like Ken and Ryu feels very obvious. But I suppose Nintendo disagreed. Unless Nintendo had other plans. Nintendo might have planned for a Sonic character to be DLC, and with both Knuckles and Shadow being an assist trophy, I feel like we are left with 2 options, either Eggman or the character that I think is slightly more likely, Tails. If Tails was ever to happen, I think Tails and Sonic would have a similar relationship as Villager and Isabelle, where they're almost Echo Fighters, but not quite. There's enough moves in there to justify them being their own characters. Like I said, similar to Villager and Isabelle. Isabelle has a lot of similar moves to Villager, but they're slightly different in a way that makes a significantly different character. Tails' recovery, for example, I think would be quite unique to his character. Frogger. Now. I know nobody has mentioned Frogger, but that's literally the point of this video. Konami seems to be on board with this entry of the series. After all, everyone is here, including Mr. Snake himself. I personally would love to see Frogger. Granted, Frogger at this point is kind of dead, but obviously the series of Frogger had a good enough concept that many years later, there's an entire genre spawned around it. Games like Crossy Road have become some of the biggest mobile games on the planet. On top of that, of all of the classic retro icons from that generation, Frogger is like the last one to be represented. I truly hope that Frogger does manage to see the light of day someday in Smash. My fingers are certainly crossed for this one. Rabbids. Rabbids. When most people think about Ubisoft representatives, their minds jump to Rayman. And as awesome as Rayman would be, Ubisoft does have their own free-to-play platform fighter, Brawlhalla, and they did add Rayman to that game. And whilst I don't think that officially deconfirms Rayman as a Smash character, I still think Rabbids has a better chance. I think they would fit right in at home in Smash. I would imagine if a Rabbid was to be on the roster, they would go with a generic Rabbid rather than any, Rabbid Mario or Rabbid Peach or anything like that from the Mario Rabbid game. I think they would just go for a fairly generic standard Rabbid. Default guy. I don't know what his actual name would be. I'm sure he has a name in the Fortnite lore. There are so many unique items in Fortnite that have been made for that game. You could design a Smash moveset for a Fortnite character that would be amazing. It's really odd to me that no one's talking about a potential Fortnite representative. Fortnite's become even bigger than Minecraft was, and people are open to seeing Minecraft in the game. I think a big reason people are not willing to talk about this character is because, of course, Fortnite's very popular with children, which I don't think should disclude it from the roster. If anything, I think that should probably increase its chances. And at the end of the day, you can come up with a really unique moveset for a Fortnite character. There are so many items in that game. It's been a long time since I've played the game, so I'm gonna misremember a lot of these item names, but there's the grenade that pushes people back instead of doing damage. That's a special move right there. For a side B, they could pull out the glider and kind of do like a drop kick style thing. So it can kind of be like a horizontal recovery. That's just a couple examples. There's tons of items in that game. Definitely enough to make a moveset for. A lot of people might think, oh, a Fortnite character, are they going to be able to build or something like that? And whilst I think you could come up with a moveset that makes that work in Smash Brothers, I don't even think the characters need to build. Again, there's so many items in Fortnite that you can make a compelling enough moveset to justify them having a roster slot, even without the building. Oh, another side note, you actually have a really interesting cosmetic opportunity here, where instead of having one Fortnite character, you could call them Builder or insert name here that's more generic, kind of like the Villager, and then just have like a bunch of different Fortnite characters in there, both from the story and maybe even some awesome multiplayer skins, some really iconic ones like the Skull Trooper, which people love. Tracer. Now I know what you're thinking. Overwatch is not on the Switch, and that's true, but I don't think it's particularly important. Of course, the best example I have for this is Cloud. Cloud managed to make it into Smash 4 despite not having any representation on a Nintendo platform. Why not Tracer? After all, Overwatch really did something special for the FPS genre. There was a very similar format being used for most shooters. Overwatch comes along and kind of breaks that mold a little bit and becomes one of the largest esports in the world. I feel like Blizzard will be represented in Smash Smash one day, and why not have it start right here with Tracer, the mascot of Overwatch, one of Blizzard's most surprising successes. Also, just imagine that moveset. That would be amazing. I love Blizzard games, and I think with the inclusion of Diablo on the Nintendo Switch, there's an open line of communication between Nintendo and Blizzard now, and hopefully that means more Blizzard games on the Switch in the future, but I'm also hoping that possibly means that a Blizzard character could hopefully one day show up in Smash, whether it be with Smash Ultimate or a future game. But again, I do find it very odd that no one's talking about this character. After all, we know that the DLC for Smash Ultimate was recently decided, and decided by Nintendo. Alright, there you go, there's my list. We went over Tails, Frogger, Rabbids, Default Guy, and Tracer. Of all of these, I think Default Guy is actually pretty likely. It sounds kind of crazy, I know, but it is worth noting that Nintendo picked all of the DLC characters. So I think Default Guy is actually fairly likely. After all, Fortnite is one of the largest gaming franchises on the planet right now. I mean, just using a little bit of anecdotal evidence, recently I spent some time with my nephews, and they all love Fortnite. They're all sitting there playing Fortnite, and I'm sitting here watching Smash content on my phone. I'm watching tournaments and stuff. And they come over and they're like, oh, what's that game? And I talk to them about it, and I tell them there's all these classic video game icon characters, all these current day video game characters, and they asked me if a Fortnite character was in there. And I said no, and they immediately turned back and started playing Fortnite. Again, a little bit of anecdotal evidence, but you can imagine how differently that conversation would have went if I said yes. Their eyes would light up with joy and be like, oh my god, really? That's awesome. And then they'd be more interested in the game. At the very least, I hope they do that just to get in that generation, right? Like, I'd love to see more people playing Smash, and if that means we have to get a Fortnite character in Smash, I'll take it. Especially because, again, that moveset could be incredible. Alright, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it all, remember to leave a like on the video, subscribe to keep up to date with future content. My name's been Bilbsy, and I will see you in the next video.